Today, we are talking about the complicated geopolitics of AI with China, the US, and the Emirates, and how OpenAI might be caught up in the story. Welcome back to the AI Breakdown. The most fraught relationship in geopolitics in general is, of course, the US and China. It stands to reason, then, that the most fraught relationship in the geopolitics of AI is, once again, the US and China. Indeed, that relationship is so fraught that this year, much of the efforts of the White House and various security agencies has gone into not China specifically, but its proxies around the world. The New York Times has just released a major research piece called Inside US Efforts to Untangle an AI Giant's Ties to China. The story is about an Emirates-based firm called G42 and why the US is concerned about its work with Chinese companies. Now, to understand why this story might be interesting, especially in the context of recent events in the AI space, let's go back to October 18th and a story from Reuters titled ChatGPT creator OpenAI partners with Abu Dhabi's G42 as UAE scales up AI adoption. Now, this was a small announcement. It came from G42 themselves, and the details were fairly scant. Reuters writes, G42 said it would utilize OpenAI's generative AI models in areas including financial services, energy, healthcare, and public services. That's literally it. That was all that was announced. However, that was not the first time this year that G42 was in the news around its AI efforts. Back in July, a new $100 million AI supercomputer deal was announced between G42 and Cerebras Systems. Cerebras, which is a company based in Silicon Valley, announced that G42 had agreed to purchase 3 of its first Condor Galaxy supercomputers, and that deal was part of a larger strategic partnership where G42 could buy up to 6 additional supercomputers by late 2024. The deal was so significant in size that the CEO of Cerebras, Andrew Feldman, was actually planning to move to the UAE for 3 months to work on developing G42's products around the systems. The only detail about what G42 was planning to do with it is this line where they said they plan to use the Cerebras systems to sell AI computing services to healthcare and energy companies. Fast forward a month. At the end of August, news reports came out that the US had been putting pressure on companies including NVIDIA and AMD, not only to block exports of chips to China as per export restrictions that had gone into effect at the end of 2022, but also to try to block sales to parts of the Middle East. Now, this came from a regulatory filing from NVIDIA, which said that the restrictions would affect its A100 and H100 chips, and while they wouldn't have a, quote, immediate material impact, they were a concern in the long run. Now, after the NVIDIA story broke, Reuters confirmed that AMD had also been asked to place similar restrictions on their business by the US government. In a statement, NVIDIA said, during the second quarter of fiscal year 2024, the US government informed us of an additional licensing requirement for a subset of A100 and H100 products destined to certain customers in other regions, including some countries in the Middle East. Now, at the time, the supposition was widely reported as not the US government taking issue with the Middle East itself, but the concern that these advanced chips that went to the Middle East would find their way to Chinese companies or the Chinese government. Adding additional intrigue, however, the US government then came out and said that they weren't blocking chip sales to the Middle East. After the regulatory filings, the Department of Commerce spokesperson said that the Biden administration had not blocked chip sales to the Middle East, adding just a whole lot of confusion to the situation. Okay, so where we were is one, there seeming to be increasing US government focus on how Middle Eastern countries, particularly in the Gulf region, could be conduits for AI technology getting to the Chinese. 2, we have the Gulf nations, particularly the United Arab Emirates, cutting deals with big Silicon Valley players, including Cerebras and OpenAI. So what is the substance of this New York Times piece about this company G42? The lead of the piece reads, when the secretive national security advisor of the United Arab Emirates, Sheikh Tamim bin Zayed, visited the White House in June, his American counterpart, Jake Sullivan, raised a delicate issue. G42, an artificial intelligence firm controlled by the Sheikh that American officials believe is hiding the extent of its work with China. In public, the company has announced its staggering growth with a steady cadence of news releases. They've included agreements with European pharmaceutical giants like AstraZeneca and a $100 million deal with a Silicon Valley firm to build what the company's boast will be the world's largest supercomputer. Last month, G42 announced a partnership with OpenAI, the creator of ChatGPT. But in classified American intelligence channels, there have been more concerning reports about the company. The CIA and other American spy agencies have issued warnings about G42's work with large Chinese companies that US officials consider security threats, including Huawei, the telecommunications giant that is under US sanctions. US officials fear G42 could be a conduit by which advanced American technology is siphoned to Chinese companies or the government. The CIA even produced a classified profile of Peng Xiao, the chief executive of G42, who was educated in the United States and renounced his American citizenship for an Emirati one. Basically, the argument that this piece makes is that G42 is at the epicenter of the US's goals to limit China's ability to both influence the Middle East as well as to access advanced technology. The article also points out that the stakes for the UAE are high, arguing that they're, quote, building an artificial intelligence industry as an alternative to oil income. Now, the article goes deep on all the different ways in which there might be some overlap between G42 and the Chinese government. G42's underlying technology infrastructure has been built with the help of Chinese companies, including Huawei. The company sells surveillance technology that's very similar to products that are popular with Chinese police. G42's portfolio includes a $100 million investment in ByteDance, which is obviously the owner of TikTok, which has been at the epicenter of questions of the relationship between China and the US, and so on and so forth. Now, OpenAI and Cerebras are not the only companies that have relationships with G42. Microsoft and Dell Technologies do as well. What's more, Andrew Feldman, the CEO of Cerebras, said he was, quote, surprised to hear about the Biden administration's concerns about G42 and said that no American officials have raised those concerns with him or other officers at Cerebras. For this article, OpenAI and Microsoft declined to comment. Now, I'm not sure that if you read this piece, you can really come away with many conclusions other than how complex the relationship between China and the US really is, especially around this question of AI, that the Gulf region in general and the UAE in specific are part of a growing thread in that tension, which is countries that have relationships with both groups. 3, that part of this story is the blurring of the lines between state and the private sector, which is causing even more challenges. And 4, that G42 is, if nothing else, very ambitious. Now, part of what makes this interesting in the context of the recent OpenAI skerfuffle was the reporting that came out between when Altman was fired and when he was rehired, that he had been, quote, looking to raise tens of billions of dollars from Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds to create an AI chip startup to compete with processors made by NVIDIA. Security expert Matthew Pines wrote a thread about this. He writes, why did the OpenAI board bounce Sam? Nobody really knows. But there are public reports of Sam's geopolitical activities that might have raised concerns. Below are some events that may explain the board's accusation of lack of candor. On June 6, 2023, Sam spoke at a Hub 71 forum in Abu Dhabi, an event put on in partnership with G42 and backed by the UAE sovereign wealth fund Mubadala. Opening for him was the CEO of the Inception Institute for Artificial Intelligence, a G42 company founded by a Chinese national. Note that G42, which is chaired by the UAE's National Security Advisor, launched a $10 billion 42x tech fund in August 2022 in partnership with Mubadala. They hired a former executive of Chinese e-commerce giant JD.com to lead their Chinese investments and expand across Asia. On June 10, 2023, Sam gave the keynote virtually at the Beijing Academy of Artificial Intelligence, an event which involved Chinese firms sanctioned by the US. There he emphasized the need for US and Chinese researchers to collaborate on AI development to manage global risks. AI has become the locus of US-China competition in the Gulf, where KSA and UAE both look to play both sides: security protection from the US and tech transfer and trade with China. G42, led by the UAE's spy sheikh, is at the center of this swirling geopolitical and tech vortex. In August 2023, G42 launched Jace, a ChatGPT-like LLM purpose-built for the Arabic world. This LLM was trained using Cerebras chips, known to be inferior to NVIDIA's. G42 also partnered with Chinese companies to boost COVID testing and vaccine development, aka mass DNA collection. The UAE has a national strategy for AI 2031, aiming to catch up on the global tech frontier and strategically shift long-term away from an oil economy. This aligns with China's national strategic ambition to become a major AI innovation center by 2030. In August 2023, the US tapped NVIDIA and AMD on the shoulder and said no mas to any advanced GPU sales to KSA and UAE. This was motivated out of an apparent concern for pass-through sales to China that bypass export controls, but it's likely G42's indigenous efforts also played a role. The US has also expressed acute concerns over Mubadala and SoftBank's investment activities. CFI US has intervened to scrutinize and block some of their recent acquisition targets on national security grounds. US has also flagged a Chinese military facility at Khalifa Port in UAE. Matthew then flags what we had just talked about with the October deal between G42 and OpenAI, and the report from Bloomberg that the OAI board had been concerned that Sam had been looking to raise tens of billions of dollars from Middle Eastern sovereign wealth funds. And then he added on November 19th, Yahoo confirmed that Altman had been traveling to the Middle East to fundraise for the project, which was codenamed Tigris, and raised tens of billions from SoftBank, Saudi's public investment fund, and the Mubadala investment company. Matthew concludes, this is all in the public domain. One has to imagine that the OAI board is privy to more details, some of which may have been shared by the US intelligence community, who give defensive briefings to US firms, which gave them serious concerns about Sam Altman's lack of candor. Now that Sam has been fired and rumors swirl about his reinstatement, I have no idea how the situation evolves. But the above hypothesis would be confirmed if the G42 and other deals were suspended as a condition of his return. Now, of course, now we are sitting here with the benefit of hindsight and know that that didn't happen. So perhaps it's all just coincidence. The Occam's razor explanation for all of this is that Sam, as the entrepreneur he is, recognizes that the stranglehold that NVIDIA has over the entire AI industry is an opportunity, and that there are very few people who have the capital necessary to actually go and compete to take advantage of that opportunity, and thus partners with an aligned interest, including these big sovereign wealth funds and companies like G42, are of course the companies he's talking to. What I think this New York Times story shows is that even if the explanation is as simple as that, it's not actually as simple as that. It's a great example of how AI is going to be a story not just of technology and not just of business, but of the shape and structure of the world that we move into. Interesting stuff to keep an eye on, but until next time, peace.